Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us on your, I'm sure, busy days. My name is Rebeka Hengalova. I am the Research Fellow of Europeum Institute for European Affairs, and it is with great pleasure that I welcome you here today. I will be moderating today's event, today's Café collaborations. Before we talk all about modern approaches to transport systems, how to make cities more livable, how to make them pedestrian friendly, or what on earth is on-demand transport, I would like to say a few words of thanks to our partners who have very kindly allowed us to be here. I would like to thank the Austrian Cultural Forum and Madame Quistop, who has allowed us to connect with our speaker online, who I hope we will soon see. I will, of course, introduce all of our speakers in due course. And most importantly, I would like to thank Campus Hybernská and Madame Milena Vicinova, who has guided us through every step and has allowed this event to happen in this great capacity. Now, on behalf of the director of the Charles University Endowment Fund and Campus Hybernská, Tomáš Vokáč, I would like to give Ms. Vicinova the floor for a few words.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure and privilege for me welcoming you here in the premises of Campus Hybernská. That is a common enterprise that was established by the Charles University and also the municipality of the city of Prague. So welcome here. I'm sure we will spend a nice and interesting afternoon discussing the possibilities of modernizing the transport and to answer the basic question. The cities, are they for cars or for people? I wonder what the outcome will be. And I also would like to thank the ladies, Rebecca and Susanna from Europeum. I would like to thank the speakers that kindly accepted our invitation. I would also like to thank the Austrian Cultural Forum. And let's start the discussion. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. And let us make sure that we hold the microphones in the right position. So today, as Ms. Vicinova has already pointed out, we will be discussing whether cities can be for cars or for people or both, or for anything in between, maybe shared bikes. And we will be discussing how to rethink and modernize mobility. We will be discussing innovative solutions from Czech Republic, Austria, and anywhere else. And we will be taking questions from the audience. So if at any point you have a question, please keep it in your mind or note it down. And after roughly a 60-minute discussion, I will open the floor. However, if it's extremely urgent, feel free to wave your hand at me and we will make sure to incorporate it. And without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speakers. I will begin with Madame Petra Jens, who is joining us from Vienna online. Petra, can you hear us and see us well?
Hello, dobrý den. I can hear you very well.
That's perfect. Thank you
for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Dobrý den to you as well. Petra is a walking commissioner from the Mobility Agency in Vienna. She is focusing on the role of walking as a central element of livable cities. She focuses on communication and advocacy. One of her public events is so-called walking cafes. Maybe we'll learn what that entails in detail. And she initiates a citywide awareness campaign so that everyday pedestrian perspectives are included in the urban planning of the city of Vienna. Thank you for joining, Petra. Our second speaker to my left is Mr. Trajan Urban. Hello, Trajan. Okay. Trajan is the director of Innovation Hub East at EIT Urban Mobility. He is one of many, I'm sure, a student and absolvent from the Charles University in Prague. Academically, you focus on European economic integration and Latin American economic development. And your focus is fostering cooperation between investors, startups, and research centers. Thank you for taking the time. And last but not least, our third speaker is Mr. Jan Střecha. Hello, Honza. Jan, or Honza, is the marketing director of Recola Bike Sharing. As I'm sure many of you are aware, it's the pink bikes. He has been at the helm of Recola's marketing for over 4 years. He has experience from a production company, Brainwave, and he has helped organize the Student festival. He has also graduated Charles University, so that makes 2 of the 3 of us at this current panel. And thank you so much for making the time, Honzo. So maybe you have noticed that I am using first names for all of our speakers. That is to make my life easier, and it does not signify any importance or the lack thereof. Let us start. I would like to start with perhaps a communication question for all 3 of you. Perhaps you can indicate with your hand if you would like to speak first. What are the most common myths that you hear in discussions about the modernization of transport systems? What parts of them are myths and what parts are true? Can you think of some? How about you have an idea?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the mic and help everyone with answering this question.
You.
Personally, when I see the discourse and the debate about transportation in urban setting, I feel like sometimes we feel like the cities as we know them were like this for their whole history and will be like this for the future. And I think cities and public space is something that we make and we can change in any city we want.
Okay, so it's tricky or difficult questions because there are many things that can be considered like myths, but one of them I would say, for example, we have learned that if we are offering public transport for free, it was said that it will be amazing for everybody will use the public transport, but the current situation, it's showing that it's not true. If you are not doing available solution that makes the transport better for the users in terms of to be clean or to be accessible, to be inclusive, to be on time, or to give proper information to the users. So this is one of them. Another one can be that perhaps the topic of our discussion, if the cities are for cars or people. I think the cities are for people, it's sure for the community, but the cars are one of the instruments for many people. So of course we can discuss how to restrict something, how to make available something, some other solutions. But in the near future, there will be always car, and there will be users that will use it because they will need it for some purposes or for some objectives.
Thank you. Petra, is there any myth that you are thinking of right now? And do you agree with Trajan that the future of cities is involving cars?
I guess cars will be involved in the cities in future, but not as dominant as they are actually now. I was thinking about this first question, and 2 myths came into my mind. First was connected to decarbonisation, and that the decarbonisation of our traffic system would be driven by electric cars, or that electric mobility would be driven by electric cars. I think we still have quite good electric traffic system. It's our public traffic system and public transportation system, including metros and tramways and electric buses. And that's the core network of our electric mobility. And all the other electric vehicles made, maybe cars or electric bikes or electric scooters, may be additional. So this was the first argument that came into my mind. And the second is related to our culture, or to our way of life. According to recent researchers among the Viennese citizens, we found out that today more than 80% of the Viennese citizens agree that for a life in Vienna, you don't need necessarily to have a car. So it is a common lifestyle that a good life in the city is possible without having a car. And that's completely different to the opinion of the elder generations or opinions we had 15 or 20 years ago. So we can see that something has changed.
Thank you so much, Petra. And you have already given me a lot of food for thought, because I actually also wanted to follow up this opening section of our debate today, assessing how great the system of transport is in Prague, and perhaps to compare it to Vienna or any other large capital or city in Europe. Many people say that public transport in Prague is quite good, right? I have never met a person that would say, no, it actually sucks. Especially people that have been to other cities or such as Brussels, and the buses are always late and you're standing in rain. How do you view this, dear Czech-based speakers, and how does that compare in terms of public transport coverage with other European capitals? And do you suppose that 80% of Prague citizens would say that they don't need a car? Maybe perhaps can we start with you, Honzo?
Well, I believe the Czech or the Prague's public transportation system is definitely one of the best in the world. On the other hand, we must never stop trying to be better, because Prague is developing. There's huge urbanization coming in, lots of people coming in Prague. And for example, lots of new developments, residential areas are built on the outskirts of Prague. And we need to make sure that those people newly coming to Prague, living in the outskirts, have a really quick and easy way to get to the city center where they probably work or want to live their lives in the end. So that's very important to, just not stop trying, be better.
Strive for excellence, right? Trajan, what is your take?
I agree absolutely that the public transport in Prague, it's good. It's part of the heritage also we have from the past. Surprisingly, one of the good ones. And comparing to other cities in Europe, it works well. It's very useful for every part of the Prague. I agree also that, for example, and you tackled the problem of multimodality. So it means, for example, somebody who is coming outside of Prague, so needs to use different transport modes to get, to the center, but after, for example, use bikes to get to the work, or a combination of other modes of transport. And it can be motorcycle, it can be a share bike, it can be tram, it can be whatever, but it needs to be good intermodality between the modes. Respecting to, or if we are talking to possibility that we could live without cars, and that it was mentioned that there are existing studies. So of course, we can live without many things, but it depends how, if you will ask every single person, how is the consideration of the people, if they need the car, for which reason, etc. So the planning of the cities, at least now, I cannot imagine without using the cars. Also, if we go back, for example, to Kubitschek, to Brasilia. So if you remember the planning of this city, which was built in 70s, 80s in Brasilia, it was just planned for cars. So they were not considering even people walking in the cities. So there are different perceptions how to use the public transport or the transport in the cities. And I think for many people it's important to use the cars if you are having babies, or if you need to go somewhere, if you are coming from long distance. So the solution needs to be the multimodality, and of course also the solutions for these people. And using cars is one of the, for the moment, things that are here.
Definitely. It's two different things completely. What can we live without and what do we want to live without? And I often hear in debates about decarbonization of transport that on any given day there's a person who's currently pregnant or giving birth, there's a person who is a frail little grandma, and the third person is currently moving a piano and they need a car for that. Of course, that is a bit of an exaggeration.
And yeah, but it's partly true. And another point, an important point, is the economy. If we are talking about Czech economy, we have high dependency on automotive sector. So we are not talking just about Škoda Auto, which all of us know, but about the other subsequent providers of many parts to the cars or automotive industry. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Petra, what do you think makes Vienna such a wonderful city when it comes to public transport that leads to such high numbers of citizens estimating that they do not need a vehicle? And do you agree with the opinions shared so far?
Speaking about Vienna, I can say that the public transportation in Vienna has a high image. It is seen as rather safe and quick, and yes, it's kept in a good quality. But Vienna is a rising city, so we have more every year. We gain more and more inhabitants, so we have to work on the capacity of our transportation system. The program we pursue actually is to accelerate the buses and tramways, to give them separated lines and to prioritize them on traffic lights. So these are some measures to accelerate the transportation system, and we also try to raise the capacity. In the inner city, in the city center, it's quite well. You can make your trips by public transport or by bike or by walking. But at the suburbia, it is different. The network is not that dense, and the outer districts, the suburban districts of Vienna, are these districts where the city development takes place, where all these new houses are built, where all these new inhabitants come, and they come to a new environment, which often is car dominated. So that's a problem. We have to offer these new citizens or these recently new inhabitants in these suburban districts. We have to offer them alternatives to the private car, and that's a big challenge. That's a really big challenge.
Thank you for raising that, that it perhaps can be offered as an alternative and rather than prohibiting the use of cars. What kind of modern solutions or approaches would you recommend that other European capitals implement that have already worked in Vienna? So we've mentioned multimodality, you've mentioned accelerated zones for trams and buses and increased capacities. I know from experience that Vienna is extremely bike friendly. Is there anything else that you think we should learn from Vienna so that our transport systems are more comfortable?
The most important point for our everyday trips is the location where we live. Most of our trips start or end at our house. So if we build neighborhoods that are walkable, or maybe you know the 15-minute, the concept of the 15 minutes city. So if the living neighborhood is walkable, and if I can reach the next bus stop or metro station by a 10 or 15 minutes walk, and then the possibility that I choose eco-friendly mobility is higher than if I live in a surrounding that is not so walkable or very car dominated. Then it's more likely that I turn to my private car. And we often, in all these discussions, we often forget that every trip starts and ends with a walking trip. So the quality of walking, the safety, but also the experience I can make while walking. Is it a nice experience? Are there green spaces? Is it a friendly, interesting, inspiring environment? These factors determine my decisions in my daily life and which means of transport I'm more likely to choose.
Thank you so much. Turning to our Czech-based speakers, what modern solutions, modernization of transport ideas would you like to see in Prague, and not just Prague, but perhaps cities all across Czech Republic? And more importantly, what parts should be implemented, what solutions and options need to be decided so that these modern systems are actually realistic in Czech Republic, right? So I'm thinking we will probably not have a completely electrified fleet of public transport, or at least of buses next year. But what would you like to see? I don't know who would like to start. Maybe you, Trajan.
Okay. So of course, bus priority or smart traffic management, it would help a lot. We are having the concept of smart Davická street, chytrá Davická, but it doesn't work because we would need more project or more perhaps some actions to use it. But I think these innovations are happening in Prague sometimes or somehow, but slowly, and we need to accelerate this. After it can be the mass, for example, services as a solution. So it means, for example, integrated applications for all mobility solutions in Prague. It would be nice for users to have the capacity, and we have also thanks to operator that we are using very nice application, but perhaps integrate more private solutions inside of this. And of course, there are many of other things that can be improved, but I think these two are the most important from my view.
Mm-hmm. So mobility as a service, and how do we make that work? How do we integrate more private businesses into this ecosystem? What would you suggest the city offers to the private businesses?
It's complicated because of the regulation and because of the agreement between different stakeholders. So just imagine we are living in outside of the Říčany city, and you are taking car to the train station to get to the Prague. So you are using car after you are using the train, and after, for example, bike. But on the first hand, you are using the private cars because you don't have accessible public transport which can help you to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. So there can be space for some private providers, for example, some small buses that can be operated in micro areas which can help with the traffic and not oblige every users to use the private cars, etc. So there are many solutions that can help to improve the situation in the cities, but it needs to be integrated. But of course, also if you are looking just on the cooperation between Prague City Hall and the different districts, it's very complicated because there is one regulation coming from the city hall, město Praha, and other regulations that it's tried to be regulated on the district level. So for some people, it's surprising that we cannot limitate or we cannot restrict, for example, access of cars of not residents to the center of Prague. But it's a complicated question because, for example, Prague 1 would like to do that, but they cannot. They don't have the cooperation which is needed on the Prague side, on the hlavní město. So it's complicated. This coordination and division of competencies and regulation.
So differentiated levels of governance and then also different priorities perhaps that hinder the progress.
Yeah, and political, of course, debate and competition, because you are having many political parties that are in the hlavní město Praha, but also in the districts, and it's complicated.
Politics in transport decarbonization. I've never seen that. That is so strange. Handing over to you, Honzo, I presume I know what you will say you would like to see more of in Prague, but I don't want to put any pink colored glasses on.
No, of course, we are happy that we are part of the public transportation system, for the public transportation card. What I'm really happy as a citizen of Prague is how this project started. As it started as first a pilot project with 2 companies when Prague paid for rides being done on bike sharing bikes using the public transportation card, Litečka. And then Prague looked at the data and said, okay, we want this for longer. And it's been 4 years now, and let's hope it's going to be another few years after this year. So that's what I would like to see more. What bikes and bike sharing brings to the city is the possibility of multimodality, and especially pretty cheap first and last mile transportation. Of course, walking is cheapest, but sometimes it's either 3 minutes on a bike or 15 minutes of walking, so it's faster to take a bike. So that's something that I'm really happy to see from the company perspective. And what I think from the personal perspective is something that, as my colleague talked, that we need better, for example, transportation to the mobility hubs in the cities on the outskirts of Prague. I believe it's not only about car parking or better on-demand public transportation, but also about building bike storages, for example, for those people coming to take the train to the city center of Prague.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how this unique example for Czechia came to be so especially for the foreign speakers, the option to use a shared bike for 15 minutes for free once a person has acquired a yearly pass for public transport? How, reflecting on the hurdle of the political feasibility and the different interests on the different levels of governance, can you talk a little bit more about how the decision was made and what were perhaps the hurdles there?
Well, I wasn't the decision maker. We were the company supplying the bikes in the end only. I believe in general in the Prague setting, in general, people and the politicians really like the idea of bike sharing being available to the public through this way. The issue is that cycling has become more and more of a culture war in the Czech Republic, which is, I think, the issue. Is people would like to see more people being active in the city streets, and it's important because us Czechs, we're dying of civilization diseases that can be prevented by just moving a little more throughout our day. And the best way to move is on your way to work or from work, because no one has time now, and this is the easiest way to implement some movement into your daily lives. But then you come to the fact that I think 56% of people in Prague said they would like to cycle more, and almost 20% of people said the biggest barrier to cycling they perceive is that they don't feel safe when cycling in Prague. And even though lots of politicians say they would like to see more people on the bikes, and it's a good idea to have bikes as part of public transportation, or just support other ways to integrate private bicycles, of course, to city transportation, there's not now the political will and courage maybe to fully implement some really innovative and we've seen proven solutions from all around Europe and Vienna especially. And as it comes to the words of my colleague, it comes down to the political hurdle and 57 Prague's districts and the main capital of Prague, and lots of politics being there.
What do you say to people that say the Prague is extremely hilly and they don't want to get sweaty in their outfit on the way to work?
Get an e-bike. It's going to be my simple answer. What we also see from the data we have from our bike sharing, lots of Prague is not Prague is hilly, but we say it has lots of terraces. There, for example, when we take Letná and Hračanská Street, they're pretty flat, and then you need to get up or down to the river level. And we see a lot of people do movements on a bicycle just on this terrace level. So it's not everyone needs to go from one corner of Prague to the other on a bike. They can use it for only a few hundred meters, and it saves their time.
Perfect. Thank you so much for for answering my tricky questions. Petra, I would like to ask you, because I believe that this is at the core of your life's work. How do we make a city more safe, and how do we increase the perception of pedestrians, regardless of their individual physical abilities or maybe age? How do we encourage them to move in a way that they want to in a city that perhaps can feel like it's built for machines rather than for people?
So for cycling, we offered the bike sharing system. Yes, 20 years ago we started to do that. It had a huge impact. Because suddenly cycling became something of part of the city's life, and now it's so people expect to have a bike sharing system in a bigger city. We cannot imagine to live without this service, and it led many people to cycle regularly and to buy their own bike, or to repair their own bike, bring it out from home. So from the garages. So this was before. Now, the last years, we invested a lot in safe cycling infrastructure, in main cycling routes all over the city, to encourage families, children, elderly people, not so well trained people to cycle. And we try to improve the pavements, the quality of our streets. When I started with my work here, it was 14, 15 years ago. It was not common to plant trees in a street. It was seen as something that's very expensive to maintain, and it was seen as a concurrence to parking space. So the need for parking space was a very high value among local politicians, but also among the media and citizens. And during this time of 14, 15 years, I could see a shift in the city's priorities. We face very hot summers. We can feel it, that something is changing, that it's very hard to stand this urban heat during the summer weeks. So suddenly the priorities turned. Nowadays, everyone wants a tree in front of his window. So green spaces and trees in the streets became a more important issue than parking space. And we know that from many requests, from many participation projects. We always ask the residents to prioritize their needs. We offer them we ask them, what if we change the street? What do you want? What are the most important 3 issues for you? And it's every time it's the same picture. Priority number 1 are trees. Second, safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Then cycling infrastructure, and then comes the need for parking space. And with this requests, we could show to local politicians that there is common sense among the Viennese citizens, and that we have a very well commitment if we reorganize our streets and change them. So with all these measures, we try to encourage people to walk more and to cycle more and to do more active mobility in their daily life. But it's not only the infrastructure; it's also the cultural work. Since 15 years, we work on a positive image of cycling and walking as well in the city. That's also yes, we try to change the perception of these means of transportation.
I'm trying to think of what kind of media coverage such a solution would have in Prague if one parking spot would be taken up by a tree and, God forbid, a little bench for people to rest and be protected in the heat waves. And that makes me think that besides more welcoming public spaces and perhaps a fairly restrictive parking policy, again, from my experience, it's extremely pricey to park in Vienna. What other measures has the city undertaken so that even in the eyes of the politicians, a parking space is perceived as less valuable than a space used by pedestrians and used for trees planting or maybe bike parking? Has the amount of cars been reduced in Vienna in the recent years? Or how else has this been possible?
By different circumstances. Since a few years, we have parking fees all over Vienna. Before, it was different from district to district. So since there is parking management all over the city, we could put out the commuters. Commuters have to park their cars outside of the city or to pay for garages. And therefore, we gained a place on the surface, and we could remove parking lanes into cycling lanes and green spaces. So this was one big game changer. The second game changer was the money. The last 5 years, I would say, was a golden period. There was a lot of money in the system for cycling and walking infrastructure because of a federal fund. Yes.
Thank you so much. Trajan, taking the word back to you, you've already mentioned the cooperation of private and public enterprises, and I can't help but notice many private companies that do car sharing in Prague and other cities in Czech Republic. Do you think that this practice will actually finally reduce the amount of vehicles on the roads of Prague and elsewhere, or will there just be even more machines plaguing the street, in quotation marks?
It's difficult. Also, we have to consider that every society is different. So, for example, the Eastern Europe, it's driven like you need to own the car. So many people are like, we need to have the ownership of something. So the conception or the perception of ownership, it's different if you are going to Denmark or to Poland or to Romania or Czech Republic. So this is one of the things. Another thing is that the companies that are driving this share car concept, it doesn't work. They are losing or they are closing the businesses because it's not profitable, and I don't know, we are not prepared perhaps, we are not using this, we don't want this. So of course we are talking all the time about car sharing models, etc. It would be nice, but it doesn't work. It's just if we are looking on the numbers. I don't know if it's because of the ownership perception from the people, or they don't trust, or the people doesn't use this service, or they use other services like sharing bikes perhaps, because it makes more sense for them, but it's difficult. So for the future, I would be very careful to say that sharing the transport modes will work, especially in Eastern Europe. Perhaps next generation, if we will change the mindset, and the new generation, if they will prepare for something like sharing more things, not just the cars, but it can be clothes, or it can be whatever. So this concept of sharing can be understood in different way. But now it's very difficult. And we were talking, for example, with Škoda Auto, and they were saying we are not anymore investing in this because it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But it's nice concept, sharing cars. Yeah.
Indeed, Škoda financed the HoppyGo platform that was peer-to-peer car sharing, and I used it a few times. It was very pleasant, and then sadly they ran out of finances. Honzo, if I may follow up with you, bike sharing seems to be very profitable, seems to be working quite well. Is that the case? And what makes it different from car sharing when it is the same demographic, it is the same country? Is there a different cultural sense? Is there a different sense of ownership needed? Or is it because one does not need to feel the sense of ownership to take the bike for 3 minutes to get to your next point of transport?
That's a pretty complex question, so I'll try to answer all of it and not forget any part of it. So I'm sorry if I'm going to ask you to ask a part of it again. In general, bike sharing is a growing industry. We cannot say that every company in the bike sharing industry is making money or is not using the same model as many of the car sharing companies do, meaning they just dump a lot of cars for cheap in a city and hope it makes money in return later on. We see it with lots of scooter companies and e-bike companies. For example, in Prague, just at the end of December, Bolt, which now has car sharing, alternative taxis, had scooters and e-bikes here in Prague, and they've decided that it doesn't make sense anymore for them to be here. So not every company is making a huge amount of money. Lots of companies are funded by private equity, Lime and others, and it's a growing industry all around the world. We are, as Rekola Bike Sharing, are only partly being invested in by a minority shareholder, and we've always been a company that's been trying to be sustainable also in our own growth, and that was probably something that really helped us during the COVID era, where a lot of people stopped moving around cities. So we were happy that we weren't so much in debt or to our shareholders, etc. I think bike sharing or using a bike in a city is, I would say, a pretty new concept to most Czechs. So they are happy to just give it a try by renting a bike on the street. And also, if you own your own bike and use it in Prague, it's hard because you always have to take it for both ways. And it gets stolen easily, which renting a bike from bike sharing company, which bikes are pink, so not many people like to steal them, is quite an easier way to do it. From my also personal point of view, that's not being backed by any data or studies, I just feel like owning a car in Prague or in the Czech Republic is, I don't want to say cheap, but it's definitely way less expensive than it is to do so in Vienna or in other countries, primarily in Western Europe. So there's not so much of a push against owning a car from the financial standpoint of a person living.
Indeed. Sorry.
Yeah, especially when we take in, for example, the gas prices. We say they are pretty high, but compared to, for example, Germany, they are pretty low.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was going to say, that even the current crisis of oil reserves we're going through, it does not seem to reduce the amount of cars on the roads. Yeah, I'm wondering if your bikes get stolen a lot, but you've kind of answered that the color is an issue.
They don't get stolen for good. They usually the log gets destroyed. Someone uses them, and then they leave it somewhere because it's pink, and people are gonna sooner or later find out it's not theirs. So We had a pretty interesting incident. Back in the days, we used to have only mechanical locks that you needed to enter a number in that we told you in the app. Then we switched to the physical. Then we switched to locks that have a SIM card inside of it, and they are always online. And some people found out that they can steal the SIM cards and use it to top up their betting accounts. So we need to stop being people being able to send premium SMS to top up their gaming accounts when they stole SIM cards from our bikes. So it's always something new in our industry.
Indeed, the hidden details of bike sharing, somehow funding the gaming business, gambling, sorry. I wanted to follow up with another concept that I would like to discuss with all three of you. And yet again, it is a way to get rid of cars, at least in some sections of the city. And I say this knowing that there are very good reasons why cars are so popular, and there are very good times and opportunities when one needs them, and rightfully so. But what about car-free or low-emission or toll zones, such as one introduced most recently in New York, as I learned? What can we, perhaps if, Petra, if you could answer as a start for us, what do these zones actually look like? How are they implemented, and what does that mean for not just the people, the users of the public space, but also the businesses around? Because one of the contra arguments I often hear is, if you can't get there by a car, the businesses will shut down because people can't shop there anymore. Can you elaborate on this idea a little for us, please?
In Vienna, there exist different styles of low traffic zones. Maybe I start with a very prominent example. 10 years ago, we reorganized the biggest shopping street of Austria, the Maria-Hilfer-Straße. It was a shopping street near the city center, and it was turned into a pedestrian zone and an encounter zone. And this 10 years ago, it was just 10 years ago, and it was a huge scandal. It was a huge scandal all over the country, and people couldn't understand why it should be interesting to walk along the street, in the middle of the street, not along the shopping, the windows of the stores, and so on. And they expected all the shops to be closed. And the opposite happened. It's a very vibrant street. If you come to Vienna, please visit the Maria-Hilfer-Straße. And it is a green and vibrant street full of street cafes and full of shops. So this was a point where something changed among the public opinion, because since then other districts claimed for such a shopping street in their own district, and people claimed for such a change of street and this high quality of public space. So we cannot say that the economy will suffer if you create and design the streets in the right way. Of course, it should be attractive. It should be attractive to walk there. Just to put the cars out is not enough. It has to offer a great experience. So this is what I can say to car-free zones or such zones. A new development is according to the Federal Traffic Act. Now it will be allowed to close some zones for non-residents, and this will be the next step for the city center to make it a big low traffic zone where only residents or people with a parking garage can enter.
And can I ask you,
to the city center.
Can I ask you, you say that the Maria-Hilfer-Straße was made pedestrian only 10 years ago, and now there's already enough political will to make yet another area of Vienna car-free for non-residents. Was the positive example of this shopping street the necessary catalyzer for such political change? Was it necessary for the citizens of Vienna to experience 10 years of a car-free zone and experience how lovely it is? And in fact, I agree, it's full of trees and there's great restaurants there as well. Or how else could such an example be transported to a different city where both the city government and the citizens agree that a car-free zone is actually a good idea?
Two things. First, the experience is very important. It's necessary that people can feel it and that people really can make this experience. How does it feel to walk along such a street, to cycle along such a street, also to drive a car? It's not completely car-free. Parts of the Maria-Hilfer-Straße are opened to cars. It's in encounter zones. Cars can be there, but cars are not dominant. So to make the experience is very, very, very important. We made the big mistake at the Maria-Hilfer-Straße. We first changed the traffic organization and later on made the new design. This was a big mistake because people didn't understand it. It was an ordinary street with curbs and car lane without cars, so people couldn't understand what's the benefit. And second, we stopped telling people what they will lose. We talk about what people will win with a project. If there's a project to redesign a street, we explain exactly what people will win, what they will gain. We tell them, okay, you will get 20 more trees and 50 more benches, the crossings will be safer, and so on. And we don't allow to let the discussion be dominated by the question of parking spaces, because we know exactly that this is not the most important issues for the citizens.
Thank you so much for highlighting that the discussion should not be about what there is a lack of, and rather what it is that we're adding to the public space, what it is that we're gaining by these new developments or different approaches. And that brings me to one of the last few questions that we have for the panel, which is also a signal to our lovely audience to please come up with the questions that you've no doubt had since minute 1 of today's discussion. And perhaps let me start with you, Trajan. What is it that would make companies want to lower their emissions so that we truly decarbonize public transport? It's the $1 million question. Is there anything that we're not telling them yet? What it is that they're winning by doing this, if we're focusing on the positives?
I will start with the things about the inspiration from one city to another one. I would like to highlight one thing. The cities, if you are traveling around Europe, and the needs of the cities and challenges of the cities are completely different. So we can learn, we can transmit something, but it's sometimes very difficult. For example, to make the public space, it's one of the priority for many citizens. But if you are, for example, going into the details and you see the political problems that can be faced in different cities. So it's different in Prostějov, and it's different in Bucharest, and it's different in Prague. Because, for example, center of Prague, District 1 of the Prague, cannot make restriction for non-resident to park here. It's not possible because it's in the competence of TSK, hlavní město Praha, etc. So it's not so easy. There needs to be some coordination, and because of the political willingness, it's not so easy question. Going back to the decarbonization, it's a very interesting question how to help the companies or private entities to decarbonize. I will give one of the example. We were talking with the people that are responsible for innovation in Volkswagen, and they said that in European level you are having some regulation, what you need to do, how you need to fabricate cars, if you need to use the material which is recycled, how you need to do the engine and the following pollution, how it's making. So basically, the regulation is obliging the car manufacturer to make small cars without strong engine, the best way, the electric cars. And this is the perspective of European Union how to help the companies or the industry to decarbonize. But the guys from Volkswagen told us, we can make these cars. We are making these cars. They are very good. They are very nice, but nobody is buying them. So we are talking about some planification, so in Brussels, or we can talk about what we would like to do, but after we are having the market and we are having the reality. So it's a tricky question if we can oblige the industry to make something what it's our dream. We can, but after we are losing the competence with China, we are losing the competence with US and other markets. So we need to be careful. Of course, if we want to be in the position that we will drive the way and we will show how to do it, you are gaining something, or you are able to show to the others what is the future, of course. But the question is, if we are able, if we have the money or the resources for this, and the reality can be, of course, different, and the impact can be different. And I was coming 2 weeks ago from Copenhagen. There is very strong cycling community, and everybody is cycling. Even I was surprised that, for example, when it's snowing, so the city it's not cleaning the ways for pedestrians. The first they are cleaning the ways for cycling ways, because they are saying it's much more better for the transport for the city, because people are cycling much more than walking. So it's different, but also we need to be careful, because the Danish economy, it can be different from the Czech one or from Moldavian one. So for this reason, I'm saying that every city and every country, it's perhaps different, and we need to face the reality how it is, because we cannot do everything what it's working in Sweden. We cannot do in Prague, perhaps now. Perhaps we can do it in 10 or 15 years, but it's like with social model. So you cannot implement what it's working in Denmark to Moldavia, because it simply doesn't work. If you are paying 60% of the taxes in Sweden and you are happy because the state is giving you back the services, that's fine. But if you are paying 60% of the incomes here in Czech Republic, many of us, we are not happy what the state is doing, and we are not confident that the services are good. So of course there will be people that will move the company somewhere else, and they will not be happy to pay the 60%. So just to keep in mind that the reality can be different.
Thank you so much. I can tell that this topic is really interesting to you, and perhaps we could do a whole nother panel on the decarbonization of transport in general and the business case in that. However, let us save that for the wine of glass, after this debate. And I would now like to ask you, Honza, similar question. How can we decarbonize transport, and what can the individuals do in these efforts, be it through their individual behavior, through their voting decisions? Are we raising the next generation of bike-forward Czechs? Are we going to turn into Copenhagen? What's your take on this?
Again, a $1 million euro question, as we're in the Eurozone. And also, I'm no expert in this. Not us yet.
Million crown question.
Yeah. To make individuals change their actions, I believe it's important to communicate to them clearly. Maybe not really actions, but rather their understanding of the world and the policy changes. It's important to communicate to them clearly how different policy changes affect the world around them. It may be hard for people to understand why bringing more trees to the streets instead of public parking space is needed, but you can show them a heat map of Prague and show them that, for example, in Holešovice, the map is the most red out of Prague, and let them ask the question why and what's there that we can do with it. I also believe, and you've been talking about it, I think like 30 minutes ago, what would happen if we exchanged some parking spaces for trees, and what would the media coverage be? Deep down, I believe that the loudest is the minority that's against it, and I believe that pretty much the majority is okay and understands the role. Let's keep it with trees, or maybe cycling, or maybe more public transportation. But it's not the loud majority; it's the silent majority. So I believe it's also important for us to let people get their voices heard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Maybe we can do some sort of rally on shared bikes and express our opinions this way. And one last question from my side, which is for you, Petra. If you could answer this sort of notion that we've been discussing, how do we truly make transport decarbonization sustainable in the most original sense of the word? How do we make it loved by the public and appreciated by politicians? And perhaps is this something that your campaign of walking cities contributes to?
I hope so. I hope so. I believe that this change in mobility needs a change in culture, and that we also need measures in culture work. So culture work means communication, campaigning, networking, supporting non-governmental organizations, civic organizations, providing information and providing events for positive experience. We also offer politicians, local politicians, we offer them positive experience with citizens. At the beginning, you mentioned the walking cafe. It's a small event. It's a city walk. We invite local politicians to walk with us and to talk about their ideas, their challenges with public space, with the reorganization of streets. And with this small intervention, local politicians realized that this is a topic they can talk about. They are not criticized for that, but they will have an interested audience. When I started with this format 15 years ago, I was happy if 20, 25 people joined us. Meanwhile, we have walking cafes with 100 or even 200 people, and it's one small intervention to create a positive culture for walking, for example. And the same is in cycling. So the cultural work is a very wide field. And the second point is that change happens all the time, and also the change in mobility behavior happens. We can see it on our studies and requests. We can see that the behavior of young citizens is completely different from their parents' or grandparents' behavior. Young people do more cycling, they do more walking, and they do not own cars that often than the elderly generations. And there are many, many reasons for it. So change happens all the time, and we may support it. We may support it with long-term communication, supported with cheap public transportation, with vibrant streets, green, healthy streets, and with attractive cycling infrastructure. So all that is supporting the mobility change.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the recipe seems to be a little bit of political will, a little bit of public and private financing combined, and then lots of cultural change, positive examples, positive conversation, and perhaps some benches under some lovely trees. With that image in mind, I would like to turn to our audience and ask if there are any questions. And if you will bear with us, we would like you to speak into the microphone that will be handed out so that the recording has the same sound quality. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Kalash, State Environmental Fund. It's exciting having Vienna with us in Prague. I have visited Vienna since 1960s regularly, and it's amazing the progress in mobility. I remember our contacts with your planning offices. Your prediction on future structure of mobility in Vienna is that walking would make 32% of moving of your population in Vienna. That's the concept. I was really amazed. That's a long-term provision of mobility in Vienna until 2050. You are thinking, let's say, in a very practical way. This is just remark how changing and how progressive Vienna is. A remark to this organization. It's nice having some competition in transportation between Vienna and Prague, because both cities are excellently equipped. And Vienna is in some parts, let's say, a few years ahead. But excellent conditions here is also, let's say, remarkable. Remark to the concept of decarbonisation. I think one of the driving force in mobility and transfer mobility to clean mobility is not only decarbonisation. It's important. It's air quality. It's a local pollution, and it has not been mentioned here. And I think it's a very important aspect here, because it has a, let's say, cost effect on population health, etc. So you should organize more such, let's say, gathering. Last remarks. All this concept should be part of the sustainable development of cities. Mobility is a part of smart cities, of, let's say, concepts which are more advanced in Austria, but they are also known here. So the mobility as a sustainable part is just a goal. And I think we should provide at city level freedom to all age groups to have access to adequate mobility. Older people will not go on bicycles, but they would get public transportation. Young generation is, of course, on the other side. On car sharing, some cities in Europe are using it, like for instance, Rome. Rome is more popular. It's coming here, but it will take sometimes, because what we prevail is ownership, own mobility, or freedom to decide how to move. Thank you very much for this event.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kalash. I'm noting down an important remark from your side. We need to repeat this wonderful event. Maybe we should have Ms. Petra join us in Prague for an in-person walking cafe, although I am hesitant that we will have 200 participants. Is there any other question from anyone besides the dog?
Hello, my name is Sofia. I'm from Bulgaria. And my question is for Petra. I was wondering, as you mentioned, in Vienna, you introduced this bicycle system. Maybe you have bicycle lanes for longer time, but shared bicycle system before 20 years. How was it then, and what was the reaction of the people? You gave us an example of the street that was closed and that people were really dissatisfied by this decision. Was it the same with bicycles or not? And how can the mentality of the people, especially of the car drivers, changed in this way?
Cool. Big questions. So the idea of bike sharing systems was existent 25 years ago. And it was one of the first corporations of the Social Democratic and the Green Party. And they decided to establish a bike sharing system in Vienna, a pilot project at a time when this was not common among cities. So the first system was Vienna Bike. It was in the year, I can't remember. I think it was in the year 2000, I think 2001 or so. And it was a system like a shopping trolley. You put the coin into the bike and then you could use it. And the effect was that everybody used the bikes, but the maintaining was very hard. People kept it in their houses and they didn't give it back. So we learned we need to control the users. We have to force them to give the bike back to the station so that other people can use it. That's the idea of sharing. And the second system was provided by GCDco. It's one of the biggest out-of-home advertising companies, and this was the system for many years. Was used also in Paris, and it still is in some French cities and cities all over the world. Vienna was the first pilot of this company and of this kind of system with fixed stations and with the registration of the users. And this ran in Vienna for about 20 years, quite well. Now we have a next bike sharing system because the stations are cheaper and the technology changed. Now most of people have a smartphone that wasn't 20 years ago. And now we have more stations in Vienna, also in the suburban districts. And yes, it's... So what was the question?
If I give example of
the impact of this, or
no. Like if I give example of my city, Sofia, like the capital of Bulgaria, usually car drivers are the one who feel very bad with the idea of bicycle lanes, and they basically, let's say, hate people that drive bicycles, especially close to the roads, and that's the biggest problem for us. Like mentality of the people, they don't really want to see bicycles because they feel nervous. It's more, it's dangerous both for them and for bicycle drivers.
It's disturbing them. They have to take care. And yes, it was the same in Vienna. It was the same in Vienna. And you can do two things. First, lower the speed. If you have a low speed zone, then you can mix cyclists and car drivers. If not, you have to separate them. It sounds easy. For many years, cyclists were separated by car drivers by putting the cycling lanes on the pavement. Not very nice to the pedestrians. Nowadays, we create separated bike lanes next to the car lanes, often instead of parking lanes, often combined with some green spaces. That might be more expensive, but it's more relaxing for both car drivers and also cyclists. And now we have lower budgets than the years before. Now we try to build these cycling lanes in a cheaper way. They are not built, but also separated by some small walls or green spaces or so. And the question how to change the mentality of car drivers, it's a long-term goal. By communication, by figuring out that it's better for car drivers not to have so much car drivers on the lane, not to stuck into traffic jams. Traffic jams are caused by car drivers, not by cyclists. So they should be happy about every cyclist and pedestrian, because for them they have more space on their car lane. Yes, to do campaigns to encourage them to change the perspective, to let them make the experience. How does it feel to cycle on a heavy traffic street? Yes, and so on. And I know it's a hard way, and it's a long-term goal. We cannot reach this from one day to another.
I might also add to this. I think a really nice example is in Ljubljana, Slovenia, the capital of Slovenia. I don't remember the exact data, but I believe something like 90+% of people were against banning cars in the city center. But no matter what, the politicians said we're gonna do it. They had the courage to do it. They did so against the, let's say, public will or the public opinion. And I believe 2 years after they switched it and they banned cars in the city center, the public, 70% of public said they never wanted it back the way it was. So it also takes some political courage, and it's an example pretty far away from Prague also. So, but that might be also one way to do it. From the policymaker level is to educate your policymakers on what the experts think and make sure they understand that it's gonna also work in their city, and they're gonna get the reward in forms of vote and public opinion after they do it, if they maybe don't ask questions beforehand.
Let's see if that strategy rings true with the growing populist governments across Europe. You need to take courage first, and then you will have voters. But it's a great idea, and actually Ljubljana seems to be similar to, at least the center seems to be similar to Prague. It's quite old and quite beautiful.
And also in Paris, to 12 years of Ana Hidalgo, if I remember correctly, the Parisian mayor showed that the city change is possible even when part of the public is heavily against it. They're gonna later on understand why everything was basically changed.
Did you have a second question?
Yeah, I have some really short questions. First, you mentioned that, again for Petra, you mentioned that you ask people before taking some decisions about their priorities. How do you do it? Via real life interviews or online, maybe have site, QR codes?
So if there is a project in a certain street or in a certain quarter, there are long-term participation processes, about 1 year, with meetings and events where we invite the residents to discuss the project and their needs, and then we make requests by letters. So the residents get letters with questions, and they also have the possibility to do it online. And then we collect all these data, and the planners have to work on it, and therefore getting more detailed. And then usually there is a second meeting with the presentation, and yes, that's the process, the participation process. So for bigger projects, there's very often this kind of participation process involved.
Yeah, so just the last question. And do you think that making car holders pay more would be a good solution also, like taxes, or just to make parking in the city center more expensive, for example? Will it help, or will it only make people more angry?
That's a good question. Both. I think it's a key measure to make parking more expensive. because our streets were never meant to park something there. During the Austrian Empire, it was not allowed to park a car on the street. It was not allowed to park a carriage without the horse connected to the carriage, to park it on the street. If the horse was connected with the carriage, it could stand for some time on public space, but not for the night and not for long term. So when it came to cars, people argumented, now the car has a motor, so the horse is always inside the carriage, so it should be allowed to park the car on public space. But originally it was never meant, our streets were never meant to be a garage or parking space for private issues. And therefore, I think it's a key factor to make it more expensive. But yes, you're completely right. It makes people angry because they're used to park for free, and therefore they expect that it is for free. So to change that must go in slow steps or in different ways.
Thank you, Petra. I don't know if you can see the room, the audience, but you made everyone laugh with that story. And what I'm taking away is that we need more horse-drawn carriages going forward. Thank you for the questions. And I believe there was there was someone in the front and then multiple more. It is 6:30 if anyone needs to go home and make dinner for your children, but please stay with us if you do not have to.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. I am from CVUT in Prague, and I have the question to your colleague Petra from Vienna, because she talked about Marianna-Hilfe-Straße, that was a change to pedestrian zone, but I have heard that the Marianna-Hilfe-Straße was changed to shared zone, because you introduced in 2013 shared zones, and if it's a shared zone or pedestrian zone, is it?
It's both. As I mentioned before, it's both. Marie-Hilfe-Straßen has 3 chapters. 2 are encounter zones or shared space zones, and the center is a pedestrian zone, and cycling is allowed all over the street.
So this is the first part of my question, and the second part. I must explain, because I am fond of bike sharing, and I use bike sharing almost every day in Prague, but not Recola, but the other company next bike. So I can discuss later with you why I decide to use next bike, not Recola. Concerning me, it's bothering when I use it in Prague, and I feel on many streets a lot of emissions from combustion engines of passenger cars. And I have experience from many cities in Germany and in the Netherlands that they have emission zones very frequently. But I didn't see any emission zone in Prague, and I didn't find any mention about any emission zone in the whole Czech Republic, but we introduced the vertical traffic sign for emission zones already in 2011. But I don't know the real reason why we have not still at least emission zone along the Charles Bridge, where is very huge concentration of cyclists, scooters, and passenger cars, and I use this way almost every day, and it's really bothering to feel it. And my question is, if you have emission zones in a shared zone in Marianenhilfestraße or not? Or if you have another emission zones where is the high concentration of bicycle roads in Vienna?
No, we have low speed zones, but according to road safety or according to the reduction of noise. But yeah, that's all.
Sorry, Petra, we're not laughing at your answer. I don't know if you can hear it, but outside of the windows, there's probably a very angry driver in a very expensive car speeding.
And regarding to low emission zones, this is something related. I was explaining about the coordination between the city and TSK and the district. So it's very, very difficult to agree on something. Even the citizens would like to do something. I am sharing this point with you because I am from here, from Prague 1. I was born here. I'm living all my life. And it would be amazing to have more regulation, more restriction, but it's impossible. The agreement between the district and the Prague magistrate.
But I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we're also gonna need to do a low emission city center due to EU regulation or EU policies. I'm not sure in EU policy, but there's a chance.
I like to remind that with the mayor Hudeček, it has been an effort to establish emission zones in Prague. It was a great project on the Prague development. Unfortunately, the study has not been accepted by the city of Prague, but it is 10 years back or more, and it was just an attempt to introduce it. And I think we should remind it because it deserved to be a part of Prague development.
Hello, my name is Markéta Braunkolová and I'm the coordinator of the Prague Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. So let me comment shortly about low emission zones. First of all, it was already mentioned that there is the European regulation about clean air, and in this respect I can say that actually the air quality in Prague is not very good compared to other cities. I assume, I'm not sure, it's maybe a question to Petra, what is the air quality in Vienna? I assume is better. In Prague we are now very closely under the legal limits of the air pollution right now, but actually in 2030 the limits will decrease by half, and it may be a major issue for Prague to fulfill the new requirements for the air quality. So maybe the political space will change because of this regulation. It's quite clear message for everybody that the air quality is not so amazing, that it has measurable health impacts on the health of Prague population, and we may see some changes with respect to opening discussion and maybe even looking for the solution that may lead to improvement of air quality. So far I've been working for the city for 3 years, and we have very fresh experience with introducing one small piece of regulation on emission limits for taxis, and we will see whether this regulation will hold until the due date, which is next year, and it's one of the effort what we are trying to do. Regarding the regulation, the low emission zone, actually the legislation is quite new. The Czech law was came into power last year only, which now allow cities to introduce low emission zones, which may be combination of low emission zones restricting access for certain categories of cars and so on. I want to only shortly comment about the first attempt to introduce low emission zone. At that time there was a impact study that actually didn't prove that the effects on the air quality would be great enough to justify the regulation, which is a very important aspect of introducing any kind of regulation, and it's not trivial. It's very difficult to prove that different types of regulation will have the effect. Okay, so the question for Petra is how is Vienna standing, or what's the air quality in Vienna right now and in future?
I have to admit that I'm not an expert in air quality. All what I know is that in Vienna we have the good conditions because of the geographic position. Vienna is a very windy city, so there's always some wind here. So I think the air quality is not that bad. And we have some restrictions for cargo, for lorries, driving during the night. I mentioned the noise problems, but I'm sorry to say I have to pass this question. I cannot step into deeper details.
Thank you very much for clarifying some of the legal points. So there were multiple more questions. I don't know who was first. Do we want to take it from the back to the front, maybe, to change it up?
Okay, I'll read the question out loud. So the question is for all the guests. The young lady here is curious about your estimations and experiences. She believes that this idea of not producing alternative cars due to a lesser demand of consumers, that is biased, at least partially. It is partially connected to a narrative and a habit. People can learn and change their consumption behavior, as we heard also in examples here during the discussion. But there is, of course, a big lobby and corruption behind the classic car industry and fossil fuels that is fueling this narrative. What do you think? What kind of role and how big of a role does this lobby and this bias play here, discussing the question of city organization, car usage in cities and public transport? Are civilians, cities, municipalities and states able to change this narrative and take away power from this lobby?
Thank you. I understand why the question had to be written down.
It's a long one. Yeah. Of course, there is a lot of need of education or explanation, but still we need to be careful what we want to achieve and how, because I wouldn't blame about our lobbyists. It's like we are in democracy, so it's democratic to lobby for everything, for what we want or what we want to achieve, like sector of the public. On the other hand, we need to start with ourselves. So if you want to change something, you need to think, okay, I will go like the example and I will do this and that. And I will ask I don't want answer from you, but the biggest pollutions are coming, for example, from textiles in the world. I don't know who of you it's aware which kind of textiles you are buying. If you are looking, it's from China, okay, I will not buy it. It's from plastic material, I will not buy it. Yeah, so we need to start with these simple things. And also if you are buying the food, we are going to big supermarkets when you are buying, or we are buying a lot of things which are in the offer and sometimes coming from China, from India, from I don't know where, instead of buying something from near farmer, from Vysočina or from Mělník. Perhaps it's more expensive. Not everybody can afford it, but the question is, if we are living like this, after speaking about producers of cars, of course we can have some idea, we can speak, you have to do this and that, because it's not related to our economy, related to our lives directly. But we need to start with the small things and change our habits and the things how we are living every day and what we are doing. Because if not, we can think, okay, if I will push the automotive sector to do something, so we will have better lives. But it's not so easy. Yeah. We are having economy, we are having the works for many people, etc., etc. So it's not easy question.
So maybe the lobbyist needs to start purchasing some organic cotton, and then they will change their work in the automotive industry as well. It's a silly joke, but
it's a joke. But I can give you another example. For example, the car manufacturers are obliged to use recycled material in the cars, in the pulp of the car, and they are using. But they are saying we cannot use just the material which is in Europe, so we are importing the plastics from Africa. So we are selling the bottles of, I don't know, Coca-Cola or whatever to Africa, and after they are importing the plastics to recycle them here and to put them in the cars. So the regulation not even is the clearest one in the room.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of regulations that sort of go against each other.
We need to use the common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just like to react to a small thing. I believe that the issue is not exactly people buying cheap clothes or clothes made in Asia. It's just the overconsumption of the European customers or the general global customer. Mm-hmm. It's better to buy one cheap shirt from Asia than 10 sustainable ones from Europe in the end.
And now, gentlemen, the million-dollar question: are you wearing secondhand clothes? I'm joking. You don't have to answer. We're talking about transport.
Oh, but I'm very careful. For example, I'm not buying many products from China. I'm also supporting in my life the products which are made in Czech Republic or in Europe at least. So this is something what I'm doing in my life. And I think it's the best way how I can contribute to the better environment and to the local economy.
Mm.
I maybe have a connected question that I believe was maybe what the young lady wanted to ask, or was part of the question. You said that the car manufacturers are pretty happy with what cars they are able to produce. Speaking of electric cars, what about the infrastructure that needs to come with it? And it's not something that the car manufacturers can really, outside of lobbying, affect. Do you see that maybe their cars are great, but the infrastructure lacks, and therefore average consumers are not so willing to buy those?
Yeah, there are two levels also. The car manufacturers are good in Europe, but also if you will talk with them, the regulation coming on them, it's making the life for them more difficult. So they are not the best ones now in the world. Let's be clear, or at least they don't have the capacity to be the best one because of the regulation or strong regulation. And the second thing is the infrastructure. It's true that it's a big challenge, especially in Eastern and Central Europe, because it would help to the users to perhaps buy the car, because if you are living in the center like me, it's difficult. The question will be how I can charge the car if I would have one. Yeah, so it's a big topic, of course.
Definitely, there's a charging station right outside my house, and there's regularly combustion engine vehicles parked in front of it, making it impossible to use. It is nearly 7 p.m. I know there's 3 more questions, so maybe if we can collect all 3 of them first, and then we will answer them. And then I think it would be fair to Petra to let her off the Zoom hell, and we can enjoy the catering, and hopefully Petra, you will be able to enjoy some catering of your own as well. But the last 3 questions. Oh yeah.
Hello, my name is Joseph Lampkin. I'm from the Charles University Environment Center, and I'd like to touch upon a little bit this idea of, trade-off between parking spaces and trees a little bit more, because that's something that really fascinated me in Vienna. I was struck by 2 things. First of all, that it's actually a much more similar city to Prague than I expected. There were a lot of cars, a lot of parking spaces, but also I did come across this one street where there was very obviously a tree planted instead of a parking space. I could tell because the parking spaces were kind of diagonal, and I kind of felt it as a way of that infrastructure is telling a story about this trade-off between what we currently are using our public space for and what we have now and what we're using public space for now. And you, Petra, explicitly mentioned, the need for emphasizing the good things. But I wonder if this was a conscious decision by the city government to really make this trade-off explicit and kind of to use the infrastructure to tell this story about how public space can change for the better. And just for anyone in the room who's interested, our team is hopefully going to conduct a study on this trade-off. So if anybody's interested in the data, we definitely are. And we're currently trying to secure funding for this. So curious to see the results of that in Prague.
Thank you for the contribution. Before we give the floor to Petra to answer, let's collect the two other questions. I think the gentleman in the front.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Scheinher. I'm actually one of the I'm one of the politicians in Prague, and I wanted to ask also Petra. You mentioned the conversion of Mariahilferstraße and that it was perceived by people very negative with the temporary change until it was finally changed by construction. But the construction change demands a lot of years of preparations and a lot of money. So do you have some similar plans now in Vienna, and how do you plan to do it? Because sometimes it's much better to make it immediate than to wait a lot of years.
Thank you. And the last one, please.
Thank you. I was really glad for that question asked by the lady in front of me, because I think falling under the bias is something that's heavily impacting the introduction of e-mobility in the Czech Republic. E-cars are even less popular in the Czech Republic than coal energy. So this narrative, and coal, don't get me wrong, coal is extremely unpopular in the country. And I think what we are hearing here, that the European Union is hampering the competitiveness of European car manufacturers by pushing them to some decarbonisation limits of lowering the emissions of their fleet, and thus killing them. I think that's one of the bias, because if you look at the market of the cars, how it's currently developing, I really don't think the competition of the market will be won by someone who's producing better petrol cars, especially not the European ones. 10 most sold models in the world are all of them outside of Europe. 2 of them are being electric. 40% of cars currently sold are electric. Tesla Y, Tesla 3. Sales of electric cars in European Union grew by 24% in 2024. So if you're comparing Europe being pushed to produce electric cars, thus hampering their competitiveness compared to China, China is selling more electric cars than fossil cars. So I'm really thinking, with introduction of ETS2 especially, I'm really thinking the way to go forward is producing the best potential electric cars and not kill our car manufacturers by allowing them to produce as many fossil cars as they can, because I really don't think that's the way forward. European car manufacturers really lost pace of the market here by being unable to produce competitive electric cars, and that's what they will suffer. So that's just my take.
I am very sorry. It's a very important contribution. I'm just getting signals that we need to wrap up. I would like to give the opportunity to Ms. Petra to respond, and then maybe we can take the last question in front of the catering, if you'll allow me, so that we can stop the Zoom sharing. So I believe the two questions were whether infrastructure should come first or the political decision. And then the second question was whether the messaging and sort of the visual communication we send by planting trees right smack in the middle of parking spaces is intentional. I hope I translated the questions correctly. Petra, would you please answer? And then that will be the end of the formal part of the debate.
What I can say is that we learned to adapt our communication, and we learned to offer more visualizations for projects. 10 years ago, we didn't work like that. Nowadays, we produce renderings and visualizations every week, and to give people the impression of the meaning of these projects, and really to offer them an idea of future experience. So this is what I can say. And it was a learning process. And yes, often it's not possible to rebuild something because this is very expensive and needs long-term planning processes. And we learned to work with other tools, cheaper measures, like school streets or cool streets and all these things. And maybe it would fill another event like this to talk about these tactical urbanism measures. I'm very sorry to say, but I really have to quit. I'm running out of time, and I want to thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to me. And now I have to say goodbye.
Thank you, Petra, so much. Thank you, Honza. Thank you, Trajan. And I believe some last words from Madame Vicenova.
Thank you very much, Petra. I'm really very thankful that you could manage to join us. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the great audience. It has been a fascinating debate, hasn't it? And it will still continue. Thank you, our excellent speakers, Honza, Trajan, our excellent and great moderator, Rebecca, and also thanks to our technicians. And now I have the pleasant duty or possibility to invite you for a catering provided by Campus Hybernská and glasses of wine kindly offered by Europeum. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the last part of the event. No, there is still one obligation for our dear speakers. Could you kindly, gentlemen, add your signatures on the wall of fame?